Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Robert Brown, Democratic leader of the Senate. As all of you know, the people of Georgia made a decision to allow gambling in this state in return for being able to encourage and enable more students to take advantage of educational opportunities. We are here today because we see part of that process threatened. And today we will have members of our caucus who will make presentations to you, after which there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. And we will start off with Senator Stoner, who is our chair, and Senator Carter and Senator Ford, who are co-chairs of a special committee that has been focused on the issue of hope and pre-K. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. We're here today to talk about high hopes and broken promises. We had hoped that we would have an open and transparent process. We were promised hearings on this this past summer and fall. That was our hope. Instead, we had broken promises in the sense that we had no additional hearings beyond what we had on August 2nd. Since then, we had a bill drop last week with very few hearings that's being rushed through as quick as possible. Again, we've had high hopes and, again, broken promises on this issue. And now we look at the bill, the high hopes for our parents and our students, again, another broken promise due to the retroactive nature of what this bill does. Specifically, that current recipients of hope are basically going to lose hope. Again, high hopes and broken promises, and that's what we see here, a trend of high hopes and broken promises. I've heard from my constituents, in fact, a recent student who made this point, that from what she's hearing is that we, the legislature, have agreed to this, that all legislators have agreed to what has been proposed by the governor. Well, that's not the case. That is not the case at all. And I want to make it clear today that obviously we have questions, that we need to have an open and transparent process. It is our hope to have that. And in fact, it's our promise to make sure that happens. Our promise to the citizens of this state, to the parents and teachers of those who use HOPE and the preschool and pre-K, program, is to make sure we have open and transparent process to have everyone have a comment on this issue, to be able to weigh in, to talk about these issues. I think Senator Carter can probably talk about questions that we have, questions about what this legislation does, and again, to make sure that we have an open and transparent process as we move through this. Senator Carter, why don't you?
It has been a great honor for me. I'm Jason Carter. I'm a senator from the 42nd District. It's been a great honor for me to work in this institution as a freshman. I perhaps am still idealistic, but I've been impressed and excited with the quality of the people in the Senate and with the bipartisan nature that I have seen, and with the fact that there are so many people in this body, in the state Senate, who really are trying their best to do what's right. And I look forward to, as Senator Stoner requested, a very robust debate about these incredibly important issues. And I'm sure that will occur in the Senate. Fostering a culture of learning and teaching, in my view, is the most important thing that we do as a state. And the education fund from the lottery account fosters that culture of learning and teaching, beginning with pre-K and rounding it out with the Hope Scholarship. And Georgia has set the standard with the Hope Scholarship nationally. And since its inception, if you work hard in Georgia and get good grades as a student, you will be able to afford to go to college. That's the promise of Hope. And Hope has always been a rock on which people have planned. And now the current plan creates a vast amount of uncertainty. It's uncertain about how much the Hope Scholarship will pay going forward. There's uncertainty about whether or not current students will be able to continue on in college. And a lot of families are sitting down today to make tough decisions about their finances to determine whether they can afford to stay in college or go to college next year. And those families and students are worried, and they have a lot of questions, and we owe it to those families to make sure that those questions get asked here in the legislature as well. As Senator Stoner mentioned, we are just now working through the governor's proposal. But we do have broad questions, both broad questions and specific questions about the approach. The broadest, initially, our issues are this. We want to be sure that we have a plan that maximizes the number of deserving students who can afford to go and graduate from college. We're not sure the current plan maximizes that number of students. We want a plan that ensures that the best and the brightest from every community in Georgia have the opportunity to get the full Hope Scholarship. We are not convinced that the current plan does that. For example, we might consider a Zell Miller Scholars Plan that would allow the top students from every high school in Georgia to participate in that program rather than tying it to standardized tests. Also, everyone agrees, and Governor Deal and others have stated that pre-K is one of the most important and effective programs that we can spend money on. The return on investment from pre-K is greater than almost any return on any government investment that we make. And this current plan seriously undermines, or could seriously undermine, the pre-K program in Georgia. By transforming that program to a half-day program, you change the economics dramatically for the private partnerships that run a lot of the pre-K centers in the state. You convert a vast number of teachers from full-time employees to part-time, and it's unclear how many of those people will stay. And there's a vast number of families now who rely on pre-K, who are now scrambling to figure out how to pay for childcare at a time when they can't afford it. Pre-K is too important and too great of an investment in our future to jeopardize the plan. We also have 3 specific questions that I'll mention now, and as I said, we're still analyzing this plan that has been going like a rocket through the legislature. But on first blush, we have a couple specific questions that we need to have answers. The numbers with regard to deals, with regard to the governor's scholarship plan don't add up. The governor's plan calls for a 10% reduction in tuition payments, but it accounts for not a 10% reduction. That would be about $45 million. The actual savings that is claimed with regard to the tuition reduction is $133 million. So there's a $90 million hole. And we need to understand how that gets filled. That has been unclear. There were questions raised in the House that I understand are still unanswered. We also need to consider that our lottery corporation pays the state a percentage of the revenues that is far below the national average. And others of our colleagues in the Senate from both parties have discussed this issue, and we look forward to working across party lines and with the other members of the Senate on that issue in order to make sure that our lottery is being run as efficiently as possible. Also, the current plan calls for a reserve of 50%. That's paid before we pay students for the Hope Scholarship and before we fund any other programs. And we question the purpose of that, certainly at a 50% level, when you no longer have Hope tied to tuition payments. In the past, a great hike in tuition could have caused you need to dip into the reserve, as has happened over the last few years. But now that that's been decoupled from the tuition payments, we wonder why we need to have hundreds of millions of dollars in a reserve that gets paid before the deserving students in Georgia. As I mentioned, those are just some of the specific questions that we have, but we very much look forward to a robust debate over the coming weeks and perhaps longer about how this important issue gets resolved. And again, I'm honored to be here as a freshman in my very first press conference. So. Senator Ford.
Good afternoon. One of the things that I want to emphasize is the need for the process to slow down a bit. This piece of legislation was introduced less than a week ago. This is the most important program, one could argue, that this is the most important program that this legislature has ever passed, or at least in the last 30, 40 years. For a rush to judgment without an opportunity to have that kind of robust debate that other speakers have talked about would be unfortunate. And that's why I think we need to slow things down. One of the things that I've heard from my constituents is that they saw this plan and they didn't have time for input on the plan. They looked at it in the newspapers like many of us did and did not have the opportunity to have input. And furthermore, These changes will change the lives of many families here in Georgia. So I think the time has come for us to slow down the process to make sure it's open and transparent, so families can sit down, take a look at this plan, and voice their concerns and provide input. And that's one of the guiding principles that we have discussed as we have looked at the Governor Deal proposal. The second thing I wanted to say is that we believe that it's important to maximize the number of students who will be able to get the Hope Scholarship, to get the full Hope Scholarship, that it's an issue of fairness, to maximize the number of students who will be able to go to college on the Hope Scholarship. And taking that into consideration, we want it to be as broad as possible. We want the program to be as broad and universal as possible for those students who work hard, do the work, achieve the grades, and go to college on the Hope Scholarship. At the same time, we think it's important that those students who are most in need have full access to the Hope Scholarship. And that guiding principle is something that we've talked about in detail and we will be emphasizing as this process moves forward, making sure that the Hope Scholarship goes to those students who need it the most. And then finally, we're looking forward to talking to the people of Georgia over the next several days, the next several weeks, so we can make sure that they have a place at the table, that there is not this rush to judgment that I referred to earlier.
We're open for any questions.
Senator Stoner, the House Democrats say that they were included in the HOPE discussions beginning late last year. Were Senate Democrats not likewise invited?
Not to our knowledge. There was a higher education committee that was held on August 2nd between the Senate and the House. There was promises made by both chairmen that there would be additional hearings come the fall. Again, a promise that was broken. We had no additional hearings on this issue. There's been no discussion in the Senate concerning that in the sense of talking about this issue. And, of course, we, like everyone else, learned what came out basically last week.
Senator, is there a split in the Democrats on this issue? Because we saw Calvin Smiley and Stacey Abrams on stage with the governor when he announced these hope changes.
I don't think there's a split. I think obviously the issues is that we're talking about is that they made changes to what the governor proposed. I think if you talk to several of our members on both sides, that we're still not satisfied, and we hope to have a more an open and transparent process in the Senate. The Senate has a tradition of having open debate and being transparent. I talked about this recently, as y'all are well aware of, and we hope to continue that tradition in the Senate with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So no, I don't see that there's a split necessarily. We all want to do the best we can for the Hope Scholarship, for the parents and the students, and also for the students who go to pre-K. This isn't just about the scholarship, it's also about our pre-K program too.
Senator, what are some of the differences that you see that you guys would rather implement? We're looking at $343 million shortfall. We're looking at 3 years it could run out. What are the things that you guys just don't like about it that you think you could cut in other areas?
Well, that's exactly, that's what we're going to have. We need to have an open debate to sit down and air all these issues out. I mean, we're still learning about what's in the bill. I think even most legislators, if you asked them to describe the details of the bill, could not tell you. And if we as legislators can't do that, why do we expect our constituents to understand what's in this bill? So part of this process, part of what we're talking about is making sure that our constituent voices are heard, that they're given a chance to understand what this bill will do and how it will affect their lives.
But specifically, the Zell Miller Scholarship says if they have a certain SAT score, they have to have a 3.7 or something like that. They'll get 100% compared to 10%. So there are specifics in the bill.
Well, and Senator Carter, if you might want to comment on concerning that.
There are a variety of options, and in the media and other places, people have been providing various different alternatives for dealing with the Hope Scholarship. But when we are looking at proposals, I mentioned the Zell Miller Scholarship, that current proposal would send those students who receive 100% almost exclusively to a small handful of institutions, and it also doesn't do as much perhaps as allowing Zell Miller scholars and providing for Zell Miller scholars to come from every high school in Georgia. So one option, for example, and as I said, we're still working on a plan. We don't have a full proposal today, but we do intend to address the issues that you're relating to. But one potential portion of that would be to change the Zell Miller Scholar Program in the way I just described.
I spoke to a number of students at Georgia Tech, and any of you guys could answer this, but they said, hey, it's hard to get a 3.0 at Georgia Tech. They have degrees where they get warnings about them, not being able to make 2.0s. I understand Georgia Tech's a really good school. I went to Georgia, so.
Full disclosure.
I don't think Tech should get any favorites, but it is a difficult school. So, what do you do for these types of schools that are a lot more difficult for students?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns that we have with the current proposal is that there's this massive gap between a 10% tuition cut, which would save about $45 million, and the $130 million cut that are savings that they've reported. And my worry, we don't know, we haven't spoken to the governor's office about this, my worry is that they're counting on people not being able to keep hope in order to make up that money. We don't know, we haven't seen the numbers, but there may be other explanations, but that's a concern that I have, which is, having graduated from the University of Georgia, granted as a law student, I would have those concerns. So,
Is one of your biggest concerns also just that hope should be tied to income? Is that what you all are saying?
Well, the point on that is it goes back to the issue of maximizing this program and creating opportunities, particularly for students who may have no other opportunity to go to college. That was the intention of this program when it began, and so that's the issue. And I think the citizens in the state need to understand and have a discussion about this. I mean, one hearing last summer, and basically 3 hearings this week, is not a deliberate process. That is not an open and transparent process. And so the issue is that, is if why are they rushing it through? Are they think so little of their proposal that they're concerned of the scrutiny it could face and the questions that could be asked? So that's my question, is that why are we rushing this through? We have at least 20 more days in this session to discuss this issue.
Well, you said that y'all didn't have your proposal out yet. You knew these cuts were coming. You knew that the governor was going to have some cuts. Where's your proposal?
Well, let me say this. We knew something was coming. We did not know what form or specifics were going to be involved in what was coming. We do know now. This has been less than 1 week. So that's why it's absolutely important that we take the opportunity to crunch numbers, to talk to people, get input from families, and know what the real impact is going to be. We will have a proposal, but we're going to have that proposal after we have an opportunity to talk to the people of Georgia. And I want to further emphasize the pre-K issue, because we see pre-K as a co-equal issue. There's been more discussion about the Hope Scholarship, but we think that the implications for young people, for children, are just massive with what's being proposed for the pre-K program. Senator Carter's already talked about converting full-time teachers to part-time teachers. We have looked at research which tells us that the 6-hour pre-K, full-day pre-K, has such a great impact, a positive impact on children. The most recent research indicates that a full-day pre-K is something that we really need to consider maintaining. Transportation costs. I spoke to some pre-K providers last week who were very concerned about the transportation costs and what the implications for what they're doing. But also, I think it's important to make sure we understand the direct impact on children. If pre-K is made part-time, there are going to be children who are going to miss meals. I think 61% of these children are Title I children, poor children, who may only have a limited a number of meals per day. So cutting out a meal is for children is not the way we ought to be going. And then finally, the impact on working parents and their ability to work when you have these cuts to pre-K, making it half day. one thing that we know is that pre-K has probably has the most positive return on an investment with children, and the changes that the governor is proposing would reverse those improvements.
Senator, the governor said, though, that this would open up 5,000 more slots to people.
Let me on that issue real quick. Let me go back to this issue that you just asked, was why have we not? Because we don't have access to the data. You know, we do not have access. There has not been any discussion with us, in a sense, up until last week, in the sense of access on the data. So going back to your point, Lori, is that so we're as blind to a certain degree as our constituents are on this issue, and so that's part of the reason we're talking about having a more open and transparent process. Now, Senator Carter, I think you had a comment you wanted to make on the proposal.
But I wanted to
Yeah.
respond directly to Lori's question to me. And, you know, I think it's very important that we, you know, we take what the governor has to say and take it very seriously. But we need to know what he's basing that on. You know, I'm skeptical of some of the assertions he's making in pre-K. But that's why we need to have a further discussion and have an opportunity to look at his numbers and talk to families.
Have you asked for his numbers? Has he not given them to you, or have you all made that overture to him?
We have asked for numbers. Others, let me answer that question in this way, to answer them both. The governor has clearly put a lot of work into the proposal, and there are a lot of ideas, frankly, that are good. There are some that we have questions about, as I said before, but I think that as we go forward, we're going to get a chance to air the questions, and part of what we're going to do is analyze the governor's proposal to ensure, to the extent that there are things that we agree with, that we would want to incorporate that. And so that's one of the reasons why we're moving with sort of deliberate pace, is we want to make sure that we get it right on this very important issue. There is certain data that is available. There are still unanswered questions with regard specifically to the data. And one of the I know, for example, that a question was asked about the difference between the 10% tuition cut that, as a matter of arithmetic, and the $130 million in savings that is reported, that has yet to be answered. So we have not received all the data. We have made overtures, although the process on the Senate side is just beginning. You know, that it hasn't yet passed the House, and we've, as I said, just begun. So we look forward to a discussion with the governor's office, and we do believe that they have been thoughtful about the process of putting this together. We just still have questions.
So I'm wondering, do you all plan on asking Stacey Abrams or any of the House Democrats to help stand behind you in your proposal? Because I was in here a week ago in this same room, and she and a lot of Democrats were up here very supportive of the governor's proposal.
No, I think they were supportive of issues that they had asked the governor to put into the bill. I don't say that they are supportive of the whole proposal by any means. And I mean, it hasn't been a vote. I mean, we'll see what happens on the floor of the House if it potentially comes out for a vote tomorrow. Again, remember, this bill was dropped a week ago. If it's a vote on it tomorrow.
Are you all going to be asking Stacey Abrams and other Democrats from the House to support whatever proposal you all put forward?
Yeah, we've had conversations with the leadership on the other side. So I mean, obviously they're aware of our position and our concerns, and you know, and our intent again is to keep this an open and transparent process. And I think that's what the leadership in the House has done, in the sense of talking with the governor, is to let's talk about these issues. Let's talk about the issues that we have concerns with, and we're going to continue that here in the Senate. We're going to continue having that process. And again, you know, I go back to the point. You know, we have high hopes, and we have high hopes that we're going to sit down and have an open and transparent discussion in the Senate on this issue. So that parents, that students, teachers, the business community has a clear understanding of what we're going to do here, because this affects, you know, millions of Georgians now and in the future. And so I think we owe it to them to make sure that we have a thorough discussion on this. And again, we look forward to talking with the governor to explain some of these issues that have been raised by Senator Carter, that the math doesn't add up based on what we've been told. I don't think that's the difference between us and the House by any means.
But isn't that just the legislative process, that things tend to move faster in the House than they do in the Senate?
Why don't you ask the House that?
But at the same, but I mean, you guys are talking about this should be slowed down. I mean, isn't it going to, you guys are basically saying that you're going to work to do what you can to slow this down once it gets to the Senate, have that discussion. I I mean, once something passes the House, you guys will have that opportunity. I mean, I'm
I
trying to
would think
understand
that
what the concern is.
I would think that the constituents that we both represent would want us to have more than a week's discussion in either chamber on this issue. In fact, we should have had discussions and hearings in the fall that were promised. I mean, you go back and look at quotes from Senator Harp, the chairman on our side, and Senator Lynn Walker on their side, that this was going to be a thorough process, there was going to be a lot of work done, a lot of discussion, and we're going to have more hearings. That did not occur.
Did you approach the governor's office and say, hey, invite us to the table, we want to take part in this?
I think the governor, if any governor, would have sense to invite both sides to the table.
But Stacey Abrams said she did have a seat at the table, that's why she's in favor of a lot of these proposals.
I mean, both sides. I mean, in the sense that you'll have to discuss that with the House leadership. Our point is that we're going to continue to work with them on this issue. We'll see what happens concerning a vote tomorrow. Again, at the end of the day, I think what the voters of this state is not about this issue that's being raised. It's about hope, folks. It's about what this is going to do for the future of Georgia or not do for the future of Georgia. This is about the current students that are receiving hope and the broken promise to them. Now, they played by the rules. They did exactly what we asked them to do. They made a commitment to make sure they got the right grades, they took the right classes, and they've continued that commitment in college. But we as a state, based on this proposal, have just broken that commitment. That really is the issue here. Not about if we had a difference between the House and Senate, if any at all, in that. At the end of the day, the citizens of the state want to know what we're going to do on this issue and how we're going to make sure that as many children as possible have an opportunity. And this is about opportunity at the end of the day.
But with the financial situation that Hope is under right now, isn't some promise to this program going to be broken?
I have no doubt about that there's going to be issues that we're going to have to discuss, but that's part of the process that we've got to do. And that has not occurred. That has not occurred. There has not been an open and transparent process up to this point. And then again, it doesn't have to be broken. I think most of the folks, and that's going to be part of what we need to look at. A lot of these promises can be honored, but right now all we have is what the governor has proposed. And again, we need to have a thorough discussion. We need to find out, if that can happen. Right now, we're going on based on information that's been provided to us. We don't know.
So I'm
The
wondering,
predictions
So-
have been for over a year that Hope's gonna run out of money. Why wait now? Why not already have something on the table?
Well, that's an excellent point. You just raised, ask me, why didn't we have more hearings? Why didn't we have more hearings? Why didn't the majority
Where's
have
the
more
Senate's
hearings?
proposal?
Excuse me?
Where's the Senate's proposal?
I think you're going to see as we work through this process that we'll probably be coming back to y'all at some point with our ideas based on our conversations and suggestions that we're going to make. Again, that's part of the open process, which has not occurred at this point.
so I'm wondering.
And I'm sorry.
I think it's
Senator.
important. I think it's important to emphasize that we're not saying that no changes should be made to Hope. That's not our position. What we are saying is we need to have an opportunity to hear from the public. We need an opportunity to further look at the details of what the governor has proposed to come up with a proposal that maximizes the number of students who will be able to take advantage of the Hope Scholarship Program. So the worst takeaway that we could have after this event is for anyone to say we're kicking the can down the road and that we don't want changes. We want changes, but we want changes that done in the right way, and that's important.
Well, keep in mind, and you said this yourself, Senator Stoner, families are trying to plan for the fall, especially incoming college freshmen are trying to decide if they're going to stay in Georgia or go out of state. And a lot of that depends on Hope. I've talked to a lot of kids that stayed here because of Hope and didn't go to UNC or Northwestern or Yale or Harvard. So the further you kick the can down the road, so to speak, the further you get away from when these kids are going to be making those college decisions, or the further you get toward when parents have to make those childcare decisions for pre-K. I understand that you all are calling for a slower, a more deliberate process to make sure everything is worked out the way it needs to be, but don't you think that's a little unfair to the families that are trying to plan for their fall?
No, I think it's unfair not to give them a chance to weigh in on this issue. That's what's unfair. And I think you ask any constituent about this issue is that, wait a minute, no one's asked me, no one has stepped up to the plate, has asked me to come to a hearing. We haven't had things around the state. We had this opportunity. You're right, we knew this was coming. But we had one hearing and nothing else this fall. We had plenty of time this fall to have these hearings, and that did not occur. So I think, yes, I'm the parent of a college-bound student. unfortunately, she's going out of state and everything. But my point is that, yes, I'm fully aware of that, and I think most of us are. But at the end of the day, I think any of our constituents, any parents, want us to have a thorough discussion to make sure we've heard their issues, to make sure that we make sure that enough opportunity, in the sense we maximize this program for the opportunity of as many students as possible. And again, we'll be, obviously, this isn't the end of our discussion on this issue. We'll be talking to y'all more about that in the days to come. I'll probably have a few comments to say down in the well today, possibly. But getting to that, again, we appreciate y'all coming today, and we look forward to hopefully including y'all in this open and transparent process as we move forward. Thank y'all very much.